Hi, I'm Katherine Schirrmacher. I'm a climbing coach from Love to Climb, and I'm really excited today to speak to Abbie Robinson, who is a two-time world champion paraclimber. She's in the B2 category, which means she's visually impaired. So welcome, Abbie. Just to start off, could you just explain what your eye condition actually is and what that means for you in terms of what you can see?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got a condition called Stargardt Macular Dystrophy, or Stargardt's disease. I was diagnosed with that when I was about 17, and essentially I was born with it, and it's a genetic condition, and it means that my eyes are going to deteriorate over time as well. So they've got a little bit worse over time. So Stargardt's disease affects your central vision, but usually not your peripheral vision. So it means that I've slowly lost some of my central vision, which is responsible for perceiving colour and fine details. So I struggle with reading and recognising faces and differentiating colours that don't have a huge amount of contrast. So obviously when I'm on the wall, it means it's quite difficult to see really small holes. I can usually see blobs, but I can't really see any of the details on those holes. And I can't really differentiate any of the colours. So reading routes is really difficult. And I kind of just have to take each move as I go. I can't really just look at the bottom and work out what I'm going to do. I just kind of have to jump on and take it as it is.
Yeah, I looked on your website, you've likened your vision to having a football in front of your face.
Yeah, so essentially, like, it took us ages to get my eyesight diagnosed, because I've grown up just adapting to it and using other parts of my vision to kind of compensate. So when I'm reading, I look out of the bottom of my vision. So I'll kind of, if I look at someone, I'll never really looking directly at them. If I want to be able to kind of engage with them properly, I'll usually look just above their head. And that allows me to kind of see some of the details of their face through my peripheral vision. So if I look straight out of my central vision, which I don't really do very often, I'll just kind of see a bit of a blank splodge, and I won't really see many details. If I look straight at someone's face, their head will just disappear. So I've kind of adapted to use my peripheral to compensate for that. That means I have to work a lot harder. Puts a lot of strain on my eyes, and it also means your peripheral vision isn't as strong. It's not as good at picking up colour and fine detail. It's more for picking up movement and giving you a sense of space. So my general sense of space is good, but I can't pick up that colour and those fine details out just using my peripheral, really.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, you said just there that you were diagnosed relatively recently and 4 or 5 years into your climbing. When you got that diagnosis, what did that mean for you in your climbing? Did you just go, oh, well, that explains a lot, and carry on? Or did it change anything for you?
Pretty much, yeah. I kind of just carried on. I mean, when I started climbing, at that point, I mean, we started realizing that I had problems with my vision. Well, at least I did when I was about 10, maybe. I had an eye test in school, and I did fine, but there was one bit, and it was actually a colourblind test that I did really rubbish on. And from then, I was kind of like, it was kind of in the back of my mind, and we tried a few different things. I'd done dyslexia tests, I'd done all these different eye tests, and I did have glasses with a really, really light prescription, and I kind of always knew in the back of my mind there was something going on, but I didn't think for a second that I was going to be registered visually impaired. And when I was climbing, when I first started climbing, I didn't think anyone else could see the top of the wall. The climbing centre where I started climbing, Sunderland Wall, has like 23-metre walls, so I just kind of assumed that no one could see the top of those. But I mean, I could only see a few meters up, and everyone else could pretty much see the top. But I just thought that was what everyone else did, and because I've compensated so much and adapted, I had no idea that I was any different to anyone else. So I think when I was diagnosed, especially because around that time, I just finished my GCSEs, and I dropped grades in everything basically because I couldn't finish any of my exams because my reading had slowed down. As my eyes were getting worse, I couldn't see the board in class, I couldn't focus. My teachers were all of a sudden saying, you know, she used to be top of the class, a bit of a swot, and now she can't concentrate, she's getting distracted all the time, her grades are dropping. And I just kind of turned that on myself and thought, I must just be really stupid. This must be, you know, the best I can achieve in school, and I can't do any better than this. And I kind of just started to blame myself for it. So when I got diagnosed, I was kind of just more relieved than anything.
Well, you're on the paraclimbing team, obviously, because you're world champion. But where did that come in then?
Before my diagnosis, I'd competed in the youth bouldering championships in Scotland, and I'd really struggled with that. I didn't really have the confidence, and I got really nervous, and I really struggled mentally at those comps. They were really intense, and I just thought, I'm not born to be a competitor. I'm a really competitive person, but I was just like, this isn't for me. I'm not really confident enough for this. So when somebody mentioned paraclimbing, and I'd been at the wall when one of the comps was on, I'd kind of seen that it was a really chill atmosphere. It was really inclusive.
It does have a different atmosphere, doesn't it, those competitions? I felt that as well. I really liked it.
Yeah, there's a really, really supportive atmosphere, and I haven't been to any youth comps since, but it definitely felt like there was less pressure on me. You know, nobody knew who I was. I still generally put a little bit of pressure on myself because I just do, no matter what there is riding on it, I want to perform well. But I definitely felt way more relaxed, and I thought, you know, this is a good opportunity for me to get back into competitions and kind of get some practice and learn to enjoy them. So I kind of went to that competition with the intention of going back and doing more able-bodied comps, really. So it was kind of essentially supposed to be a tester, because I thought, I'm not disabled enough, I'm not blind enough for this, but at least to compete internationally. But I thought, this is a good practice, and this is a good kind of way to get back into it. And then I turned up and won, and then they invited me on the team. So kind of worked out quite well.
Fantastic. With sighted people, the retinal images that get taken, they're not crystal clear images. In fact, it's the images that get sent via the optic nerve to the brain. It's the brain that makes sense of those images. And the brain does that via memory, experience, and your knowledge of the world. So I wondered, when you think about that, for you, for your memory, for your experience, how do you think you use your memory and experience now in your climbing?
I think I rely a lot on memory, and I think that's definitely helped me a lot in my climbing. I know a lot of people that have started climbing, a lot of visually impaired people that have started climbing when they've found out about paraclimbing, like after their diagnosis, and they've started climbing, and I think they've maybe found it a lot harder to get into it. But I think because I had better sight when I started climbing, I could build up that experience, and then I kind of lost more sight as I grew up, and then I already had that basic understanding of the techniques, and you know, that basic bodily awareness when you're on the wall, and the understanding of the types of holds and everything. And that's made a massive difference in the way that I now climb as a
So you think a lot of the way you climb is from those formative climbing years where you really put the groundwork in with your technique then?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my memory makes up for a lot of things, and my brain compensates for a lot of things. Like I said, if I just kind of look at a wall or something, my brain will kind of compensate for that blind spot that I've got in the center of my vision. I don't use that central vision. I've just learned to adapt around it, and my brain kind of fills in the blanks. So if I just look around, I think I've got full vision, and it's not until I actually try and actively look out of that central vision that I realize, oh, there's nothing there. So it's really, really interesting how much the brain compensates for these kind of things, and how much, you know, you use your memory. Like, if I go to the wall, like I love using things like the moon board and stuff at the wall, because it's always the same, and I can just rely on my memory. I don't need to see anything, and I could probably close my eyes and do routes on there quite easily, because I do very much rely on my memory and just that understanding of what's around me. So I find it, say if I go to a new climbing centre, I always know that I'm going to find my first couple of sessions there quite difficult, because it's a new space, new types of holds, new colours, everything's quite new. And when I go to a new climbing centre, I'll go, oh, I really am a bit blind. And day to day I don't really think about it, but when I go to a new wall, I go, wow, I really am blind. And then if I go to my usual wall, the climbing lab in Leeds, when I go there, I know all the colours off by heart. I know what colour holds like have what kind of edges. I know, if I go onto a blue route, I know exactly what the kind of holds are going to be like. So
even though the central vision is responsible for colour and detail, so you're not if I see a blue hold, you won't see blue in the same way that I will see it, but you'll have a new version of that blue.
My colour vision it's not rubbish, it's pretty decent. But if things are quite similar colours, then I can't really tell the difference. So I generally find, say, an orange and a red route, if they're next to each other, I might not be able to tell the difference, especially when they're covered in chalk and shoe rubber and stuff. Footholds I find really difficult, because they're a lot smaller and usually a bit black off shoes. So anything that's quite close together I find difficult. So like, say, like bright pink, bright orange and red, they all kind of merge into one. And especially if I'm looking at little footholds, they all kind of look the same. But again, this is where that familiarity and that memory comes into play, because if I go to the climbing lab, I know what shape the pink holds are, I know what shape the orange holds are, I know what shape the red holds are. So I can look at hold, and even if I can't tell what colour it is, I can usually tell by the shape of it or by the feel of it whether I can go, this is a really big jug, this is going to be an orange, this is going to be one of the easy routes, not a pink. And I can usually tell that. But if I go to a new wall, I haven't got that memory to rely on. So that's when I usually realise quite how blind I am.
So, I mean, obviously a huge part of competition climbing is route reading. So does that mean then you have particular things you do for route reading in a competition? I know you have a sight guide as well, but say you've read all the moves, have you got strategies for memorizing those moves? What is your process for route reading?
Yeah, so if I'm in competition, say internationally, my usual sight guide has been B Fuller, who's one of the paraclimbing coaches. And during isolation, or say in a qualification round, you get loads of time to look at the route, but in finals you get about 6 minutes, and we watch it on a video. So usually what we'll do is we'll talk through the route a couple of times, depending on how much time we've got. And we generally try and use quite simple, straightforward keywords, and we'll generally just talk through every move, and particularly pick out any kind of crux moves. So any holds, we usually focus on any holds that might be a little bit out of the way that I might not notice. If there's a few moves that are pretty much straightforward, straight in front of me, and the holds are decent, then we'll kind of just cast those aside and know that I'm generally going to be fine. But if there's particular holds that are a little bit far out the way that I might not notice, especially footholds, if there's any footholds that are maybe stuck out on a volume that I might not notice, we focus on rest spots. So we generally kind of talk up the route just a couple of times, and then we focus in on the crux moves and any moves that I might miss or any particular difficult holds. And then we also go through rest spots as well, usually on the crux moves, or if there's a hold that my sight guide can't necessarily work out whether it's going to be good or not, we might come up with a couple of different strategies for, this is plan B if that hold's not as good as we thought it was. And we generally Yeah, so we generally try and have a couple of plans for the crux moves and just focus in on those particularly hard moves and try and find some good rest spots. But yeah, it's the routes are generally about 15 to 18 meters long, so I've got a lot to memorize in that time. So we usually try and keep it simple. When she talks me up the whole route, we'll just try and get a feel for it. Is it particularly pinchy? Is it particularly crimpy? Is there a style to it? So that we try and keep it simple, so I haven't got total overload.
That is great. I mean, how are you using your time at the moment then, during this rather challenging time? I've
definitely tried to shift my focus a little bit to training some other things instead of just focusing on that physical training all the time. I think last year I spent quite a lot of time really focusing on my head game and the mental side of competing and training and all that, and that's why I've got so much psych at the moment, because I've really worked hard on that, and there's still always improvements to be made, so I am still trying to focus again on, you know, just getting that head game really strong. And I think this is a good test for a lot of us, because, you know, a lot of us climbers and just anyone that's really sporty kind of does rely on their sport and rely on their exercise a little bit to as a bit of an escape from things, I think. And I definitely find climbing as that's kind of a bit of my outlet to kind of get out any emotions or any stress and stuff. So it's kind of a bit, I think, a good challenge to take that rest, and that is going to be really challenging. I've already found it really challenging, but I think it's a kind of a good way to address those issues head on a little bit. And yeah, there's definitely some progress to be made in kind of the mental side of training, so I'm hoping that I'll come out of this really mentally strong.
Well, I think you're spot on. I think absolutely that is one way to look at this. A challenge is a challenge, however it's presented to us. And if we can overcome a challenge, then yeah, you're going to come out mentally stronger for it. Well, Abbie, thank you so much for that, and for your time. And yeah, we'll be in touch over the coming months. But good luck.
Cheers.